and welcome to the very first episode of the very first series of The Ultimate. I'm Mike Brown, or half the time these people may call me Greg Hunter. Either one works. I'm surrounded by several of my wrestling colleagues, friends, and compatriots from over the years, and Don Matthews. We'll start over here. We got Merciless Don Matthews, self-proclaimed Reformed Mark.
Yes.
Yes. We've got Marty Phillips has been seen on the show before, but the disorderly Philip Payne.
And the hippo.
Yes, and the Mid-Atlantic title belt. And then we also have APW Hall of Famer. Jeremy Vane would never forgive me if I didn't say it that way. The unstoppable Shadow Jackson. So, who ain't going to say a damn word. We did have a couple of people that were going to be here. Iceberg was supposed to join us. I had a whiteboard and a marker prepared for him.
Why had to be white?
Here we go.
Because of because I can't have chalk trays stains on the floor.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
But it's a white carpet.
Oh, shut.
It's more tan.
It's a cream carpet. Anyway, we're off to a rousing start, folks. This is the way it's going to be. So, the Ultimate, we've already set up everything for you. Today we're going to be going through Division 1, so to speak. Our brackets broke up into 4 divisions. We're going to get to the Elite 8 for the first part of this today. It'll make more sense as we go. It's a roundtable discussion, so not a whole heck of a lot is going to make too much sense as far as time or whatnot. We'll talk about it as long as we have to, but we have to come to a consensus. We all have to agree, at least a majority, on who goes over to move on in our tournament. We're trying to figure out the ultimate NWA/WCW World Champion from 1981 until 2001, 20 years of history. So we will start with our number 1 seat in the tournament.
And the last seed.
And the last seed of the tournament, numbers 1 and 32. The Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Actually, his opponent is not number 32. There were a couple of people on here that are actually technically lower. All of our competitors were seated in the tournament based off of how long they were champion, combined reigns. There are a couple of people that held the title less time than David Arquette. So, there are some gimmies in this tournament, and this is one of them. So, we'll start with Shadow Jackson, Ric Flair, and David Arquette. If you say David Arquette, I'm throwing you out the house.
Ric Flair, just basically because he was a wrestler. David Arquette was a prop for the Monday Night Wars when WCW was losing. They were reaching at straws, grabbing at anything they could to stay above water. And also, David Arquette had the movie that had just come out, and they were trying to latch onto that too for any publicity to stay relevant. And they traded in tradition and sportsmanship and the glory of what that belt should be for, a mercy grab. And, over the years, Arquette had said, it wasn't my fault. I didn't want it. It wasn't me. Didn't matter. The booking was horrible. Ric Flair would not even wrestle that match because Arquette couldn't walk up the steps to get in the ring. So Ric Flair.
All right.
I can't say much more to that. Just pointed out, and I got it on my paper for obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons, just as Flair for obvious reasons.
Flair, because if you've got to bring somebody in to catch ratings, you could have brought anybody in the world in better than David Arquette. Even though they had the movie going on. Who was the guy from the Three Musketeers that was in that movie?
Oh Lord, Oliver Platt.
Oliver Platt would have been better. Would have been somebody better.
I would have put
Jimmy the King
and Scott Conn. Scott Conn from Hawaii 5-0.
I would have put Jimmy the King over David Arquette.
I can go on with that, Jimmy.
But there's no reason for anybody like that
Crown.
to hold something with that lineage, and it was a joke. So yeah, Flair.
You think that's bad? Wait till next week. No, I'm not going to disagree. John Johnson actually will be doing his rebuttals to our videos, so get ready for that, guys. He's going to be seeing all of these, and he'll be coming up with his own rebuttals to our thoughts. When we ran through this as a test bracket, he tried to convince me on how David Arquette would go over.
Well, you could book it. You could book it to where he would go over.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider that if you put Flair in there with David Arquette and Eric Bischoff's in the driver's seat, then that couch is going to beat Ric Flair before anybody.
And you got to remember, John Johnson once upon a time put over S.D. Jones over Hulk Hogan in '84. At the Spectrum, he did this. He knows it.
I agree with that booking.
Oh Lord, here we go. It's gonna be a long night.
We'll start with Mr. Payne on this one. Handsome Harley Race against the chosen one, Jeff Jarrett.
Oh God, I thought you were going to say Rick Michaels.
No, not
the original.
Not the
Chosen
original.
One.
Okay.
I got Harley over
Hey,
after
Rick.
taking a lot of heat, but Harley comes back and takes him out.
Okay.
I give Harley a nod on that.
I agree. I think Jeff Jarrett is one of the funniest dualities that there is when you talk about a worker, because he is ridiculously overrated, but then again he is ridiculously underrated. He is better than what anybody else would book him. Everybody else is going to book him smaller, but he's overrated because when he books himself, he's Superman. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So, I dig Jarrett in this match, but it's Harley Race, man. Harley Race in his prime was one of the meanest, toughest, just most merciless guys that had ever been in the ring. Period. His matches before Starrcade '83 with anybody else, when you watch them, it's when you talk to people who are a little bit older than us and they say that's when wrestling was real. Mm-hmm. They're talking about fights between Harley Race and anybody, where you can look close up and you see the taters and you see there's a scene in Starrcade '83 when he's dropping a knee on Flair and you can see Flair's head compress because when he drops that knee on him, it's legit. I don't see Jeff Jarrett even booking himself over Harley Race, so I'm giving it to Harley.
What do you think, Shadow?
I agree 100%. Harley Race was a grinder. He's an old schooler, and is the oldest man on this panel. I was there for all the conversations you were talking about. Harley Race is from a time that, however you book it, Harley Race would wrestle it his style. So I think it would probably be a entertaining match, but it would be a short match because Harley Race would wait for a mistake, and then he just grind Jarrett into the ground. And no matter how you book it, it would have to come off that way because no matter what you say, Harley Race was real.
Yes.
Even at his age now, if you see him doing any interviews, you'll swear he can hold a belt now.
Don't mess with his chili.
Yeah.
we have some brackets that were sent to us by a couple of colleagues who couldn't be here. Renowned Georgia referee Ken Wallace and renowned booker and manager throughout Georgia, the Reverend Dan Wilson, have both sent us brackets as well. Ken Wallace said something I thought was really, really intriguing about Harley Race. He said Harley Race was the most legit of the legit.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays into his personal bracket, which we may talk about later on. I got to ask this. Anybody wants to answer it, though. You said, Shadow, it would be short. I don't know that I agree, Race goes over. I don't know that I would book it as a short match because Jarrett was brought in old school.
Right.
His dad is Jerry Jarrett. He broke in his teeth with the likes of Dundee and Lawler and people that were all contemporaries of Harley. So is it really, if you saw that as a match, is it really unbelievable that Jeff could go over?
I think it would depend on the territory you're booking in. If you're in Memphis, Georgia,
Texas?
Texas, yeah, you might get a longer match. But I think where, like the Carolinas or Florida or further up north where it's a faster pace, I think the match would have to go shorter because Jarrett would get a lot of shine because he's quicker and younger. But then the cutoff would have to be so sudden and violent.
It'd be that flying knee.
Yeah,
It's over with.
it'd be Jarrett. It's like the net around the dog. He's all over, and then it's done.
So we will move on to our next match, which I'm going to give spoilers. JJ, when we did the test bracket, declared this match a draw and said neither man moved on.
I actually consider that myself.
So our next match is Sid Vicious
Oh.
against Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner.
Is this pre-broken leg Sid Vicious?
This is well. Now here's the thing: it's Sid Vicious as world champion.
Okay.
So pre or later, whichever one fits what you think of it with Sid as world champion.
Who did he beat?
Who did Sid beat?
Who did Sid beat for the belt?
Oh God. Well, I got a computer in front of me.
Beat Benoit and then Goldberg beat him. No, I'm wrong.
No,
I'm wrong.
Benoit beat him and they gave the belt
Yeah,
back to him.
yeah.
I probably should have pulled the title history up before we
I
started.
probably should have looked at the bracket.
Well,
I work a lot.
call it in the ring, kid.
I worked like 87 hours last week. So.
Well, while you're doing this, I'll just say that I'll go with Sid because as limited as he was, Scott Steiner was more limited later on. Now, if we're talking Scott Steiner, the tag team champion, I say Scott Steiner. But if we're talking Papa Pump, I go Sid all day.
Are we talking these guys in their prime?
Oh yeah, in their prime.
This is
Are we talking mullet Scott Steiner? Or are we talking about
no.
White
This is Scott
Big Papa
Steiner.
Pump.
This is Scott Steiner as world champion.
Papa
Okay.
Pump.
Okay.
That's why I say I got to go with Sid because Pump was even more limited than Sid was as a champ.
I went with Sid, but it was a rough match. Lots of rest spots. Lots.
The match started in
popping
the
for
rest.
headlocks, kid?
And Sid goes over with a one-legged powerbomb.
One-legged power
I
bomb.
agree.
One-legged.
I don't know what a one-legged power bomb exactly.
Well, he only got
is.
one to stand on. He's out.
I'm
Come on now.
gonna disagree with both of them,
Okay.
and I'm saying
Right.
Steiner.
One leg in the butt kicking
Really?
like this.
And I'm saying Steiner because of one thing. You can't forget what you could do. Scott Steiner, even as Big Papa Pump, could still throw a Frankensteiner flat foot. Okay? The man could still get on the top rope and Frankensteiner somebody flat-footed without a doubt. We're talking about when he was WCW champion.
Mhm.
We're not talking about when he was part of the $1 Million Mafia. We're not even talking about when Triple H was killing him in the WWE.
Right.
We're talking about when Scott Steiner got ridiculously ripped and then started pretty much losing his temper on everybody.
When he walked out as White Thunder next week,
Yeah,
Scott Steiner.
exactly. Now this is my argument for Scott Steiner.
Oh, to answer your question, Vicious beat Kevin Nash twice.
Well, who didn't? I didn't. I understand that. I can see it too. But because I'm gonna be shooting on you later. I'm saying Steiner for really easy reasons. We're talking Sid, who couldn't cut a promo if you gave him a very sharpened knife, and the promo was butter. The guy was horrible. I realize we're talking about wrestling here, but if we're talking about the entire wrestling industry, we're talking about somebody who can go over.
You're
But
talking
he-
the package.
We're talking about the entire thing.
But he did say he was the man who rules the world.
Yeah, but Scott Steiner could pick up that world and throw it back at him.
This
This guy,
Yeah.
I'm not saying Steiner recliner. I'm not saying anything like that because I've seen the moves that I saw Scott Steiner pull out of his junket at a whim. And a lot of these, I'm going to be talking about movesets.
Right. Right.
Because there's a lot of guys that held belts that were ridiculously one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Shadow's probably going to have a rematch from a long time ago when we get into the third day. Because I'm
Okay.
going to rip on somebody. But have you ever seen Scott Steiner's vertical suplex
No.
turned into a pile driver?
Yes. The
Screwdriver.
Steiner
Ridiculous.
screwdriver.
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculously unsafe too.
But you never hurt anybody. You never
No.
hurt anybody with it.
No.
That's
but-
one thing.
But only like 4 people would take it.
It doesn't matter. But we're talking about if this was a shoot, could Scott Steiner get Sid Vicious up for that move?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Probably, yeah.
If this was a shoot, could an NCAA collegiate wrestler
Well, yeah, that's trumps everything because
Beat-
he has background.
beat
Yeah.
a guy who just drools a lot and throws a very sloppy power bomb? Let's be honest. The guy threw a kick and broke his own leg. I mean, Sid was bad, and you know I loved him in the E when he was Psycho Sid and when he was riding around with Shawn Michaels. But we're talking about Sid Vicious from WCW, that, in my opinion, should have never been a horseman, ever. And I don't think he's elite enough to be a horseman. He was just the hottest thing at the time.
At the time, I agree.
Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, if he was back in those days, would have been a better horseman. Put him in a suit and put him next to Arn Anderson. That guy's more elite. His NCAA background. We're talking about if Sid starts over, which he can't overpower him. Sid was strong, but he can't overpower Scott Steiner. And we're talking about technique. Scott Steiner gets him every time. You're telling me that Sid Vicious is gonna roll up Scott Steiner, or if somebody's gonna roll out of that? And talk about catch as catch can. Even before he was Big Papa Pump, you still got to remember all the skill that you used to have. You're going to tell me that catch as catch can, Sid Vicious is going to even be in the same arena as Scott Steiner. You don't forget that. It's riding a bike.
Well,
I'm saying Scott Steiner.
In the event that it turned into a shoot, I would agree with you. I would say Scott Steiner. I'm on my bracket when I wrote everything out to begin with. I actually said Sid Vicious, but my rationale for Vicious was you said Sid can't cut a promo if he had a hot knife and butter. Mm-hmm. Neither could Big Papa Pump when he was world champion.
This is true.
So,
he was more consistent.
Yes, he was more consistent. He consistently got bleeped. He consistently got the 7-second delay. He's the reason there was a 7-second delay on TNT for Nitro. So yes, he was more consistent in that regard.
But you believed him, though.
I believed Sid, too.
I couldn't believe Sid.
I go with what Arn Anderson said about Sid, too. It's just, if you're going from a wrestling standpoint, a visual presentation, as awesome as Scott Steiner is, just from the height and just from the perspective of, if Scott Steiner comes to the ring in jeans, I'm like, that's a big dude. Okay. Sid Vicious comes to the ring in jeans, it's like, wow.
And he often did.
Yeah, and like you say, if you turn it into a shoot, Scott Steiner, 10 out of 10. But if you're putting it in the wrestling universe, I'm booking from what I want the crowd to see as shocking compared to, oh my gosh, I have to say Sid. Just for that.
I think Sid is if you built the perfect physical wrestler from the ground up for that time frame, for this time frame that Sid was in, you probably wind up with Sid Vicious. So
he definitely had the intensity.
Yes. And by this time he was the Millennium Man, Sid Vicious.
He would quit 3 times to play softball. That's amazing. You got to show it at the Garden. I'm playing softball.
I think for our panel, unfortunately, Don's going to get outvoted.
That's fine.
And Sid's going to move on. But I do want to point out, Dan Wilson and Ken Wallace both agreed with you. They both put Scott Steiner over.
These guys have good minds.
Whereas JJ said, F it, it's a draw. So
I came close to doing that because one had a bad leg and the other was blowed up. So.
That'll count out inside of 10 seconds.
Yes. Next up, Diamond Dallas Page, the original People's Champ of professional wrestling, at least for the era. It was him before it was The Rock, versus the 5-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Booker T. We're back to Shadow.
Oh, man.
You didn't look at the bracket either, did you?
I did, but I still, it's almost a draw, but for the opposite reason of the last one. It's just because from a skill standpoint, they're equal. Now, Booker T may have more of a moveset, but from how they put a match together and how they actually wrestle.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Are you taking King Booker and his WWE career into account with this? So you are just isolating him to WCW?
WCW.
Okay.
WCW.
Okay.
Because that wasn't far off from when him and Benoit had the series.
Yeah, they did their best. Was it best of 5 or best of 7?
Best of 5. And, that's when Booker T was on fire. Now, You got to put DDP and the Savage feud, DDP, and just about anybody else that they had, DDP and Goldberg.
Yes.
Who could have pulled that kind of match out of Goldberg?
Not Triple H.
Nope.
I
The Rock.
have to go by the slightest to DDP, just by the slightest.
I knew that guy was smart.
Just by the slightest. Just because Booker T as champ didn't have the serving size as DDP did. DDP defended against more people. Booker T was pretty much at the tail end.
I'm going to get mine out of the way real quick. I said DDP, and my rationale for DDP was very simple. I thought he was more over than
Yeah.
Booker T was for the time
Yeah.
frame. He was the first guy to ever get to the NWO, which was a huge deal.
Yes.
No one got to him before DDP did. And I defy anyone to sit here and tell me that DDP was not Dusty Rhodes for the 1990s.
Dusty Rhodes with a mullet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don?
He's next, isn't he?
Yeah, we're going to
Bounce
look
around.
at
We're gonna
Okay.
switch.
Yeah.
Page, easily, and here's my. I'm not even going to toss this one up because, there's a easy way through this, and it's moveset for me. How much build up does Booker T have to do to hit that scissor kick,
Good bit.
or the bookend? How much build up? How much play to the crowd? How much to give somebody as dangerous as Diamond Dallas Page to get ready to counter? Or can Booker T set him up for the bookend and then DDP just jump, twist, and end it with a diamond cutter out of nowhere?
The original out of nowhere.
The original out of nowhere. And who was the most unstoppable person besides Shadow Jackson in wrestling?
Jacob
in
Ashworth.
In the late... Yeah. Hi, Jake. In the 1990s. In the late 1990s, who was the most unstoppable?
Goldberg.
Goldberg. Who gave him a match so good that the pay-per-view ran out. Okay? And if you've watched that match in its entirety, it's Goldberg's best match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To this day.
And it's not him. It's Diamond Dallas Page. Absolutely. And I think DDP, hands over fist, just a better worker. I wouldn't say that much, but I would go like this.
Yeah.
That much better worker than
Yeah.
Booker T.
Yeah.
Yeah, or that much.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I will say that DDP goes over, and he does it when he goes. Booker T hooks up the bookend, and he diamond cutter out of it in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's booking it. We're talking about.
Now, that's it.
He's giving us finishes.
That's the thing. Oh yeah, all mine. I give you the finish.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yep.
I like it.
All right. So DDP moves on unanimously. So that gets us to the second round of preliminaries for this first division. So these are the last two matchups for this episode. We will start with a rematch from Starrcade 83. Mr. Payne.
Oh, we're doing that now?
Yeah.
Which one are we doing?
Oh.
The Nature Boy Ric Flair versus Handsome Harley
I
Race.
gotta move down my bracket here. 9. All right. Oh, it's a classic. 1 hour marathon, bloodbath. Flair over the crossbody.
He
Well,
gave
shit.
the actual
I
shoot.
was going to say, shit, what'd you do? Just watch the end of
No.
Starrcade 83?
Nope. That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes.
I still got my old VHS.
Do you really?
No, I
Because I want to watch it.
no.
It's on the network.
That was the first match I watched when I got the network.
Really?
Absolutely.
$9.99 in case
Yeah.
y'all want to help us out.
The absolute first match I watched when I got the WWE Network. I remember it was a day off. I was working at the prison at the time, and my first day off, I went, okay, what do I want to watch? Starrcade 83, and I just fast forwarded it all the way to Flair and Harley. This was my first memory as a child. I was over in Star at I think it was Star. It was wherever my Uncle Leroy lived, and he had a closed circuit television. And we watched Starrcade 83, and man, I was rooting for Flair.
It was a Flair for the gold.
And that's not the reason why I say Flair. I say Flair because of this. As rugged and as brutal and as mean as Harley Race was, Flair was that much more sneaky, even though he was booked
Devious.
as the baby as this.
Right.
He was faster. He had just as much, if not more, wind. The guy could go 60 minutes and go take a hot shower and go 90 more.
Mm-hmm.
He had the endurance of Shawn Michaels in the late part of his career that Shawn Michaels had in his prime. Ric Flair would outgrind the grinder, in my opinion.
I'm going to get mine out, and then I'm going to let Shadow have the last word on this. I said Flair as well. My rationale for Ric Flair was simple, and it had to do with the time frame we're looking at. We're looking from 1981
Yes.
to 2001. If we were looking at the body of Harley Race's career, I probably would have put Harley Race over, because I think Harley just came off as so much more legitimate in a time frame where you had to be legitimate. Whereas in this time frame, when we're looking at the 80s, Ric Flair is the wrestler of the 1980s. He had the style. He was the evolution of what the world champion was going to be. So he could do a lot of what Race did, and had to in a lot of territories, and he could work with the Jack Briscoes and the Dory and Terry Funks and the Harley Races. But then he could also turn around and work with the Ricky Steamboats and the Lex Lugers and the Stings and the Magnum TAs. He could do any style you wanted him to do. And if anybody ever wants a testament to how tough Ric Flair is, there are 2 matches with Ronnie Garvin you should probably watch.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
I can't really add anything to what you said. He was the evolution of what was to come. Flair was, like you said, he could team with Steamboat on a Monday in Greenville and wrestling in Greensboro on Saturday, and it would make perfect sense. And the crowd could buy it, because just like Harley, but different, he let you know the belt was the most important thing. If you come for this belt, I'm not going to have the same rules as I would have if I was without. And that's why the Steamboat feud held so much water for so long, because it was 2 friends fighting over the belt for different reasons. The belt to Flair was life. Steamboat, it was accomplishment. But that's why it was such a good rivalry. And Flair could take that and make it go with everybody. The Von Erichs, Steamboat, Youngblood, Tommy Rich, DiBiase, Dick Murdoch, Dusty. He could take it and make it mean more than just a strap. And that's what Harley did in the 70s, but Flair did it. He was in Starrcade was the beginning of him reaching further than what Harley could have done. So Flair.
And I'll say this, looking at this list, I was just checking something. Aside from the obvious, which would be David Arquette, and maybe Hiroshi Hase, who's in a later part of the bracket, I want to say Flair's worked every single person in this list.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty exhaustive list when you stop to think that there's 32 wildly different characters on here. So, Flair's over, unanimous. Our last match for this episode.
Woo! Sorry, Kitty.
We've got the Millennium Man, Sid Vicious, versus Diamond Dallas Page. We'll let Shadow start us off.
Diamond Dallas, 10-minute match. Sid gets a lot of shine, goes for his finish, and I don't know where. 1, 2, 3. Not a whole lot to it.
Yeah, I mean, DDP was so over. Everyone looks at Randy Orton today and goes, he can beat anybody because of the RKO, and you could have him hit it from any point, any time of the match, and you believe it. The RKO is not the RKO without Diamond Dallas Page.
Right.
So, you know, and I agree, it would be Page.
I got Page as well. Just as Shadow said, DDB hits the cutter out of the power bomb,
And he
rolls
could
him
have.
up, and got him.
Yep.
Good
Mine's
night.
got mine's a lot different reasons, though. Yes, Diamond Dallas Page wins, no doubt, but I don't think it's because he hits the diamond cutter out of nowhere. I think it's because he lasts longer than Sid Vicious does. Sid will get tired.
That too.
Yeah.
That,
I mean,
that's
this is
a good point.
the whole George Foreman Muhammad Ali
Yeah.
argument. He can just rope a dope him the whole time, just take it and take it and take it and take it, and then when Sid is too tired to do something else about it.
To snap the powerbomb.
That's another
He
great
hits
point.
he hits the cravat, boom, and it's done with.
That's another great point because there for a while, DDP's gimmick was you couldn't beat his ass enough to pin it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You couldn't beat him down to the point that he couldn't hit the diamond cutter.
That was the whole reason him and Savage would feud, because Savage couldn't beat him up enough. He had to take ribs and everything, and still was fighting.
To give a little insight here, we're pretty much in the same place. At the end of this episode, this means we now have our first match for the Elite 8. That's coming up in a few weeks. So in the Elite 8, the first matchup is going to be the Nature Boy Ric Flair versus the People's Champ Diamond Dallas Page. We are pretty much where Dan Wilson was. Dan Wilson agreed with him and said Steiner would beat Sid Vicious, but still put DDP over Steiner.
Thanks, Dan.
Would you have put DDP over Steiner?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then, for the record, Ken Wallace had Harley Race going over on Ric Flair.
Communist.
But still had DDP going over on Scott Steiner. So Ken Wallace had Race versus DDP as his Elite 8 match. And who knows what John Johnson's going to come up with. It should be interesting.
David Arquette will probably win the whole thing. This is the way I book it.
Now, is this true that the winner of this tournament gets Outer Wands for the AWA Heavyweight Championship and brings them together?
No, Mr. M.
Okay.
Mr. M.
Okay.
So, well, folks, I think that wraps us up for this episode. Next episode, we will have our next part of the bracket. Feel free to let us know who you think should have went over in the comments below. Don't know what the heck that was.
Popping a beer.
So until next time, folks, for the Unstoppable Shadow Jackson, for Philip Payne, for Merciless Don Matthews, I'm Mike Brown or Greg Hunter. I'll probably call myself Greg Hunter for the rest of it. We'll see you next time on The Ultimate.